The Tangente is, without a doubt, the most emblematic watch made by Nomos. Elegant, minimalistic, but not that simple. Inspired by Bauhaus, it has become a classic with more than 30 years of history. And today, Nomos releases a new duo of Tangente watches with rather cool blue dials and in-house movements. Before we move on to these new watches, I want to talk about the Tangente itself, about its importance, about what makes it special. We've never done it on monochrome, so I thought it was the perfect time for a look back at the past. Nomos isn't one of the old brands from Glashütte. It's quite young actually, and was founded in January 1990, just 2 months after the fall of the Berlin Wall, which is about the same time as the renaissance of two other important brands, which are Lang & Söhne and Glashütte Original. However, an important thing, Nomos was founded, and that's the important word, founded from scratch, and it is still independent to this day. A couple of years after its creation, Nomos presented its first collection. 4 watches, 4 variations around the same design language, named Ludwig, Orion, Tetra and Tangente. They were all sleek, minimalistic, and fell completely into what I call a classic with a twist. Watches that feel dressy, but with a certain audacity in the details. Another important thing with early Nomos, they were all sort of inspired by the past, by one precise school of design, Bauhaus. Typical of the 1920s and 1930s, and mostly seen in Germany, Bauhaus has been one of the most influential currents in modern design and architecture. The style tends to feature simple geometric shapes like rectangles and spheres without elaborate decorations. And surely it feels when looking at Nomos watches. For a good reason? Yes, and specifically the Tangente. The first model, we have one that looks exactly the same today, was a 35mm round watch with a hand-wound puzzle movement, and was the most Bauhaus of all 4 models. It was inspired by the first Bauhaus watches of the 1930s. If you look at the classic Tangente we have here, the reference 101, there's no question. It really has that influence, all the attributes of the Bauhaus style. Looking at this watch, the 101, which is still available in the collection, it's almost the same as when it was first presented in 1992. There is one major difference, and that is the movement. Until 2005, Nomos was using ETA calibers. Then the brand went in-house and presented the caliber Alpha. And if the specs and architecture are close to the ETA movement, it is now produced in Glashütte and has several upgrades. When I looked at the classic Tangente 101, I see the essential Nomos. This watch to me is the most emblematic. It's everything a Nomos should be. The case is compact, 35mm these days, pretty small compared to the rest, and the watch is German in the best possible way. It has a simple graphic cylinder case, the lugs are angular, short, and then there's the dial. Again, it feels simple at first, but there are so many details in the indexes, in the fonts. This watch is not simple, it's minimalistic, voluntarily sleek, but you can feel the artistic side in the graphics. If you have to have only one Nomos, this is it. Or maybe you want a blue dial, Tangente, with a Neomatic movement. Yes, today we'll see 2 new models in the collection. More modern in the mechanics, upgraded on multiple sides, a bit more funky too, but essentially these are Tangente watches. These 2 new models are following last year's platinum grey versions. Essentially, they are the same. Main difference is the color. The new watches have a so-called blue-gold dial. The dial is first brushed, then gold-plated, and then galvanized in blue. And the result is a really deep and shiny blue tone, not your classic blue. The numerals and hands are silver-colored, so there's a decent contrast, and a nice cold look too. The only touch of color are the Neomatic letters, which are gold-plated. As said, Nomos is releasing a pair of new blue-gold Tangente. One has the classic 35mm case, the other one, more modern, has a 38.5mm case. But the two are really thin, measuring just below 7mm. And on the Tangente, contrary to many Nomos models, the lugs are quite short, so both are comfortable. The design is all classic Tangente, with a flat, polished stainless steel case and angled lugs. You can have these 2 models with either a solid back or a sapphire crystal, which I clearly recommend because you want to see at the beautiful in-house movement. Indeed, inside is the Neomatik caliber, or DUW 3001. Thin, compact, and nicely decorated. It has all the elements of a movement from Glashütte, with thin stripes, gold lettering, and blued screws. This automatic movement with bidirectional winding boasts 43 hours of power reserve and comes with the in-house hairspring, the swing system. These two new blue-gold tangentes are worn on a very supple Horween shell cordovan strap in black. But you have plenty of options to choose from Nomos website and some more striking colors too, which I kind of encourage. I really like this new blue-gold dial. It's quite luxurious but rather discreet. And I like that Nomos is still offering two different sizes. Personally, I would go for the smaller model. Not only the small second is better positioned in my opinion, but I also like the small case on the wrist. It really has charm. Of course, the larger one is also to be considered if you want something more modern. Prices for the Tangente Blue Gold are still to be confirmed precisely, but should be around 2.9 thousand euro for the 35mm model and around 3,000 euros for the larger edition, which are essentially the same prices as the Platinum Grey models, and both are now available. Thanks for watching!